afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our seminar. I am hopeful that you can all hear me, and seeing some of you are so very kindly saying hello. I presume that you can hear me okay. So welcome and thank you so much. You guys know this, having taught online, that it's always a bit of a scare that you feel you're talking into the void and nobody can hear you. This year, again, unfortunately, our meeting is virtual, and it saddens me greatly. And like many of us, I hope that not in the not too distant future, we'll all be able to get together and have the usual meetings that we have, which are always a little easier, a little more friendly, I think, and also allow for more discussion. While we are waiting, no doubt, for some people to join us, if I could, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Steve Lever. I am a senior academic English consultant with Express Publishing, and I've had the pleasure of working with Leirilivro in Portugal for many, 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 many years, and no doubt some of us have met. And for those of you I haven't met, where were you last time? It is usual this time of year for us to go around and meet you and talk about the new project we have available. This year we have Digi Up, which I'll be talking to you about in just a few minutes. But to start with, if I could, just a couple of reminders about house rules. The chat, as you can see from your polite greetings, everybody, is working fine. If you have any questions, it would be great if you would put them in the chat, please. If you use the question and answer, there is a danger they might not get seen in time because I can't keep my eyes on everything. So please, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. My colleagues from Leirilivro are also online and with us this afternoon. And if there is anything they can help you with, I am sure their fingers are already resting by their keyboards so that they can answer any questions if I don't get round to them. Please feel free to ask anything. Please note that if it's to me, I'm afraid it'll have to be in English. My wonderful colleagues, of course, will be quite happy to converse in Portuguese if that is more appropriate, although I don't think it'll be 100% necessary. So by all means, questions in the chat, someone will answer them. Either I will do it live or my colleagues will do it in the chat box. If we don't get around to anything, or if anything occurs to you after we have finished today's session, then by all means, you have the contact details for Leirilivro, and they will be happy to answer any questions that you may have, give you any further information, etc. Okay, so please don't feel if we finish the seminar and something suddenly occurs to you, you're not going to get an answer. We will be answering all your questions, even if not this evening. On a practical note, the boxes with the project have all been sent to schools. The guys have sent them out. If you haven't got hold of it yet, at least hopefully you should have the leaflet available to you today. And to keep life simple, that is what we are going to base today's presentation on. We are aware some of you may have not been able to get into school or not found the project yet, so we are going to be working from the leaflet. If when you do get back to school and you find that some reason you can't locate the project, please again talk to the guys at Leirilivro, but they have sent out, and they're wonderfully organized, projects to all the schools, so you should find it there. I think that's all the housekeeping I wanted to mention. The other thing I want to mention is that this background is really doing strange things to my hair. I do have hair, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. It was either that or tidy my apartment, and I decided to go with this, as many of you who've been doing virtual lessons will know well. Okay, so let me do the time-honored tradition of screen sharing. Let me just make sure I get the right screen. That is the one. And we shall now be screen sharing. I hope that you can all see the screen there. Thank you very much indeed, Carlos, for confirming that. What I need to do is just make sure, because whenever you share the screen for some reason, the chat decides to disappear, which is very irritating. I'm just going to move the chat there so I can keep an eye on you guys and make sure that we don't ignore you, because that would be horrible, because that's the biggest drawback of doing things this way around. Okay, so hopefully you should have the leaflet. It isn't, and excuse me for looking down because I have my leaflet as well. You have a leaflet entitled Explore, and basically what we're going to be doing today is going through that and giving you a run through the main elements of the course, how the course works, how it's been designed, what you can expect, etc. Okay? As always, it's important to point out that the course completely follows all specifications that are applicable, bearing in mind, of course, Portuguese ministry specifications, and of course, things like the Common European Framework of Reference, all of which come together in deciding on the criteria by which the material is designed, okay? Also at these levels, we do bear in mind things like national exams, etc., and we'll be talking to you a little bit about those as we go through. Okay, so we shall move through our presentation. He says, hoping the gods of the internet and PowerPoint will let him. There we go. So what we have just on this first slide here are things that you will already be familiar with. The level of the book, of course, follows the Common European Framework, and it kind of goes through from B1.1, B1.2. There's a kind of slide through those levels there. It follows, as I said, all the requirements of the ministry in terms of the student profile and the learning targets. Those you will know far more, you'll know tons of details about. We've certainly discussed them in the past. You guys are familiar with them. Also there, you are going to find 21st century skills. These are things we'll touch on as we go through. And I'm just going to open my leaflet so I keep up to speed on all the right pages. 21st century skills. Obviously, we normally talk about things like the 4 C's, looking at things like communication, creativity, cooperation, critical thinking, etc. Those are there. But also we will be looking at some of the soft skills. So for example, the idea of working in groups, being able to lead, being aware of other people, these kinds of things, the so-called soft skills, are also going to be encouraged, I think is probably the right word, in this series as well. So you're going to get all of those. And of course, curricular flexibility at this level. We know that people may need to jump around between things, not necessarily do everything. So the course has been designed to have a certain amount of flexibility within it. And we'll talk about that more as we go through, and I'll point out the bits to you where if you want, certain things are optional and certain other things are not. Okay, and don't do as I just did and get your hand stuck to your leaflet, because that happens apparently. Okay, so let us move into the material. There's a lot I need to tell you about, and I want to make sure that we get time for everything. And of course, if there are any questions later on, we'll get to those as well. So let me just get those up on the screen. Okay, so essentially, what you have is a book with 4 modules. Each module is in kind of 3 units. And you will see that each unit has a similar, although not identical structure. For those of you who have your leaflets open, we are now getting into page 4, okay? And we'll be talking about who gets what for the teacher, for the student, as we go through, okay? So you will see that each unit has certain elements that are the same. So you've got your reading, your grammar, your vocabulary, you've got listening, some more grammar, vocabulary, speaking, writing. What does change, for example, is the unit you can see in red there. So in the first unit, you have intercultural competence. In the second, cross-curricular. The third, you have public speaking. And in each module, and you'll see those at the bottom line, in the bottom line at the end, you have other extra things to do as well, which we'll be talking about as we go through. You've got global culture, global citizens, excuse me, debates and review sections. Okay, so some of these are perfectly possible to kind of focus on more or focus on less as you wish. Okay, so you've got the ability, should you wish, to kind of not necessarily do everything. Okay, let me just get those up. What you will see there are the topics that are covered throughout the course. Why am I getting flashes? Dear Lord. Okay, sorry, something keeps trying to flash up from my toolbar, and I don't know what it is. So, no, that's not it. That doesn't matter. Okay, so we have world of many languages, technology, media and global communication, like we're doing now, teens in the global era. So we're looking at issues that are very much relevant to young people. I should point out this is, of course, a brand new course. It's written recently. So all of these ideas, including ideas related to things like technology, are up to date. The use of things like social media, etc. All of those things are kind of as up to date as they can possibly be, since the thing was created and printed essentially this year. So it is a book that is up to date, and we hope the themes are of interest to students, and through those they will engage with the language and also develop the other skills that we want them to develop, because education is not just about a specific subject. It's not just about maths or history. Education is also about educating the individual as a whole, and we hope that through the English course we can do our bit to also help students develop the totality of the skills that they will need in life as they go through. So all of these things we're going to be looking at in more detail. What I just wanted to do is to give you a kind of overview here. Let me just move on. Okay. So what you will find, and you can see that already, is that you have a lot of choice here. You've got a lot of stuff that you can select from. You see you've got 2 vocabulary lessons. They're not identical. They do work in slightly different ways. You've got listening and speaking activities going on. You've got a lot of different styles that are used. You're going to find pair work and group work, individual work, etc. We've even got debates included. Okay, and all the things that your ministry expects as well, like their social and cultural development, etc., etc., etc. Okay. I hope that's clear to everybody. As I said, all of these things we're going to look at as we go through, okay? And give you a little more information about all of them. So we shall now move on. Let me get my first, there we go. Okay, as we said, the book is arranged in 4 modules with 3 units in each. And what you're going to find is the similar structure, starting with the modular page. The modular page is one of those things that some people really understand and some people don't really know what it's about, and some people are kind of, yeah. So let me just very quickly explain. The modular page is very much a part, especially at these higher levels, of making sure that students are included in the educational process. So what you get at the beginning of each module is students are told very, very briefly what it is they're expecting to learn. And that's important because a very important part of modern styles of teaching is making sure that students do things like self-assessment, for example. And as teachers and as a class as a whole, we get involved in formative assessment. Formative assessment is only going to work if everybody kind of has the same information. So one of the things we do is we make sure that students know what they're supposed to achieve as they go through the particular module. And this will help them also regulate their own learning. I can't know if I can do something if I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do. So we let them know it's there. It's very straightforward. It's not time consuming, but students should be encouraged to look at it. The other thing that it does is it kind of activates ideas and concepts that students may already be familiar with, so that they know what's coming up and their brains are already working on the language that they may have covered in the past, or experiences they've had outside the classroom that are related. It may also send up some red flags when students say, "Ooh, I'm not sure what that is. What does that mean? Or what's that about?" That gives you valuable information before you've even got into the module. So please do have a look at that. Make sure your students have a look at it. It's kind of, I always think of the modular page and the review page as two bookends, if you like, two ends of the bookshelf. Yeah? This is the starting, and when we get to the end, we check back to make sure that we've acquired, everything that our learners should have acquired during the course of the lesson, okay? So fireworks for this project, that would be cool. We have to do that next year when we can actually finally get together, present the book and have a firework display. That will be so cool. Carlos, the marketing guy, is now having a heart attack. Very important part of this course is this idea of flipped classroom asynchronous learning. Now, as our learners get more mature and get older, it usually is the case in education that a certain part of the weight of learning is put on the shoulders of the students. And this, again, is part of this whole idea of 21st century skills and student development. The idea that they have to learn to work a little more autonomously, that they have to make sure that they are approaching learning in not this kind of spoon-fed approach where we give them everything, but they're encouraged to also explore the language, deal with the language on their own outside the classroom. So you will find what we've done throughout the course is we've turned a few on their heads. So for example, here you can see that little symbol, looks like a house. Wherever you see this symbol, this is designed to let you know that these are activities, what we call the flipped classroom. What does that mean? It means very simply that what we do here is essentially give certain activities for homework. Now, these activities for homework are not necessarily the traditional activities for homework. In this case, for example, here, what we're going to ask the students to do before they come to the lesson is watch a video connected to, but not the same as, the text that they are going to be encountering in this particular lesson. So what you will do is that the students will watch the video at home, and where they get the video from, etc., we'll talk about a little later. It's from the Sala Digital, and we'll talk about that in kind of one go, but we will obviously be providing the students with access to the video. But I'll try and keep everything together so that information is not too spread out. They will watch the video at home. There are some questions of a kind of general comprehension nature, critical thinking nature, that we then ask the students to think about, so that when they come back into the classroom, if you like, the lead-in that we would normally do has already been done at home, but it's done in such a way that we hope they will find interesting, that maybe even sparks off some debate or some discussion in the classroom, and of course, very importantly, activates concepts and the associated language. Okay, so flipped classroom concepts we're introducing here. This is something that has been used more these days when many of us have been teaching virtually, when students have been encouraged to use things like YouTube videos or what have you, by teachers who've started to use more flipped classroom techniques in their sessions, okay, because of the way we had to teach. And we think it's a great idea. This idea of asynchronous learning, it also means that students, for example, who maybe find things a bit difficult or maybe didn't understand everything in the video, can check things out before they come into the classroom. I stress can, nothing is perfect. But what we want to encourage is for students to start to try and find solutions for themselves, or at least to come to the classroom armed with questions. Yeah, so I watched this video, it was talking about this. I didn't quite understand that phrase, or I didn't quite understand what they meant by this. So this idea of asynchronous learning, learners learning at their own pace, learners learning outside the classroom, is a very important part of the structure of the book at this particular point. Obviously, there are traditional things going on as well, but this is an innovation that we felt was important to you. Okay, so this is the whole idea of student development there. There are two types of videos. You have the one I just mentioned, which is the kind of flipped classroom video, but we also have used video to activate the text as well. So these videos will be available to teachers, again, through the Sala Digital, where you will be able to access videos and use them in your classroom to show the students the text in kind of a video format. Please remember, thank you very much, Teresa. Yes. Flipped classroom activities develop students' critical thinking. And that's a very, very important comment there. They're forced to work on their own. They're forced to deal with things. They're forced to think for themselves. And that is the point here, especially at this level. We need students who can think for themselves. So thank you very much, Teresa Maria, for mentioning that for us. You got the text there, as I said. The video of the text, the videos will be available if you will bear with me. I'll show you where everything is a little later. Ernesto, if you just bear with us, of course you will have access to everything, and I'll tell you all about that a little later on. Guys, please, the technical questions about the videos, I promise you I will let you know everything if you will just bear with me. It's very, very simple how they'll get access to all these things, okay? But I'm trying to keep the information arranged so that you will have it all kind of in segments. Bear with me, trust me. No, don't apologize. It's a perfectly fair question. I promise you it will be answered. All questions are good. All right, so, because otherwise I get off track, as you can see, and then maybe other things get forgotten. This is my only logic. I forget stuff. I was saying, the videos of the texts help contextualize the videos. So again, for learners who maybe find things a little bit difficult, when you've got a kind of visual context in which things work, it really does help with comprehension, of course, and then you're getting into things like accent development, etc., as well there. You will find there are the traditional kind of reading comprehension questions as well. You can see that on the screen in front of you. Yes, we have fun, but we have things like examinations to prepare for. You will see key vocabulary. I've highlighted that for you there. Definitions expand students' vocabulary. So key vocabulary, key takeaway vocabulary, vocabulary that is very relevant to the subject, not incidental vocabulary, but vocabulary that is very, very focused is there as well for them. Now, that's up to you, whether you want to do that before the text, after the text, it's kind of up to you, okay? If you feel it's going to be difficult, do it before. If you want them to do the text and then kind of work more with that vocabulary, that's up to you. Alrighty. So we then have, as I mentioned already, all the texts have been specially written for the course and all based on topics we feel will be appealing to students. I know you can't appeal to, you can't please all the people all the time, but we have done our very, very best to make sure that the texts are up to date, okay? At the top of each page for the student, they have the descriptors, so they know what they're trying to develop. Again, this goes on this idea of the module that I said, providing students with the information that they need to help them focus on the skills that they need to develop, okay? Because, as I said, we have a national exam we have to bear in mind. There are tips throughout the book, and you'll see them throughout the module I'm showing you, where you will see tips that, general tips on how to deal with exam-style questions, so that when learners come to the exam itself, hopefully, if they do get stuck, and let's hope that doesn't happen, but if they do, that there will be techniques that they can fall back on so that they can work with a kind of methodology so that they have something to hold on to in the examination if they do find that they're a little bit confused. There's a kind of structure that they can use to help them find the answers. So you will find those there. It comes throughout the book. You'll see them on many of the pages as we go through. Now, what you will also find, of course, is after we've gone through a kind of analysis, and here we've had reading comprehension, that there will be a kind of synthesis activity as well. So you can see symbols there for critical thinking. And the critical thinking question is basically asking them to think about what they've encountered in the text, not as vocabulary, not as grammar, but as ideas to be expanded on, to be judged, to be talked about, to be questioned. And of course, all of that generates language as well. Also teaching students to justify their arguments, to justify their point of view, to explain themselves, to exemplify. And please remember that those skills, even if it's done orally, will feed into things like their writing as well. And interestingly enough, it can also feed into their reading comprehension when they're following someone else's logic as well. So there's a really important activities there to get them use the language in a way that's realistic, but very rich in terms of its learning opportunities, okay? Whenever I'm doing PowerPoint, I think there should always be a little bit of music between transitions. That symbol you'll see there with the kind of 3 speech bubbles is for group work. If there are 2 speech bubbles, it's for pair work. And this again is where we're looking not just at the language, but at the 21st century skills and the soft skills of listening, accepting ideas, disagreeing or agreeing politely, exemplifying, asking for clarification. All of these skills are incredibly important, and they can be practiced through these activities based on the topic. Please remember, we've read about, we've seen videos about, we've learned vocabulary for. So we're providing them with the skills that they need linguistically to practice the skills that they need in broader terms, the 21st century skills. Excuse me. My throat gets drier doing these than it does when I do proper seminars. Okay, the next page is grammar. Now, this is one of those ones where it's kind of up to you. Because at these levels, a lot of the grammar that's coming in is going to be revision. You can see here, present simple, present continuous. Now, if you feel that your students are comfortable with that, if they've done it and you know them well and you know it's all good, don't do it. It's as simple as that. This book is designed so that if you don't want to go through that, if you'd rather do something else, one of the speaking or the reading activities or whatever it may be, it's okay. Okay, do not feel compelled to do every single exercise there. If it is grammar you think that they're weak in, obviously, then you're going to look at it. And if as you go through, you find that they're not as sure as they thought they were or they told you they were, you can always go back and maybe use a few of those activities just to brush up on it. If you find they are very weak in certain grammatical issues, we do have extra grammar worksheets, which I'll be telling you about in just a few minutes. Let me keep up with my leaflets so that I know where I am. For those of you following, we are on page 8, okay? So as I said, it's basically revision. What you will find as well in those activities is that they are kind of in increasing terms of things like cognitive load, so that they go from more simple to more complex. The more complex usually involves more production, more creativity with the language, whereas the simpler activities tend to involve just finding things or selecting things. So there is a kind of grading there. So for example, if they feel very confident, go to the last one. If you feel that students are, you're not sure where they are, try one of the simple ones and just see where they go. But there is a grading between those activities as they move from 2 to 6 in this particular case, okay? So do please be aware of that. Again, there are videos for grammar. So if you wish, you can have them look at that at home and come in. Those videos present the grammar explicitly. So if they do have any questions, they can come into the classroom and ask them. Again, this fits into this whole formative idea as well. They watch the video. If they're happy, cool. If they're not, they can come in and ask you about it, and you can provide information and help. You've got realistic but guided input. So it's stuff that we've created, and obviously it practices certain structures, but the grammar is contextualized as well there. Okay, and let me just graded grammar exercises, I've mentioned that as well. And of course, one thing I didn't mention, the exam style tasks as well are going to be there with tips and help as well. Okay, there we go. There are the tips and help. There is another icon there on the left-hand side of the page, and that I'll tell you a little bit more about later on, but just to let you know that we also have PowerPoint presentations prepared that are downloadable that will help you if you wish. There are PowerPoint presentations ready with kind of explicit presentation of grammar too. Okay, so you've got that there as well. Righty. So let us move on to the next bit. We have vocabulary. Okay. Now, for me, vocabulary is important. Personal opinion. At the higher levels, vocabulary really is where students will separate themselves out into very proficient users of the language or average users of the language. Grammar, when you're speaking, and even in some writing, to be honest, can be fairly straightforward, fairly simple, and still be correct. It is a student's ability to use their vocabulary, to manipulate it according to situation, their awareness of vocabulary depending on context, depending on interlocutor, you know, where they're speaking, what the purpose of their speaking is, to enable them to select the appropriate vocabulary and, very importantly, the correct vocabulary according to what they want to say and the situation. So you're going to have a lot of work, for example, on things like word formation, on things like idioms, I'll show you later, on things like phrasal verbs and things like words confused so that they don't make mistakes between words that kind of sound the same or look the same but don't mean the same thing. All of these things we look at. And for me, this is a very important part of building up our learners' ability to communicate effectively and appropriately, because those two are very, very important indeed. As you can see, we use pictures to contextualize vocabulary and help learners understand the words, because at these levels, we really do not want to be running for translation. That, I believe, at the lower levels, there's some argument, but by the time we're getting here and we're thinking about examinations, we really, really, really need learners to be able to work things out for themselves without running to that. Also, we help train the learners in how to remember things like vocabulary. So we're doing things like, for example, categorization as a way of remembering words and their meanings or their usage. We do encourage dictionary use. A dictionary is a tool. We're not fighting shy of it. To be honest, by these levels, I would prefer they tried monolingual dictionaries, but okay, there are online dictionaries and there are things like Google Translate, and we can't ignore them and we can't hide them. What we have to do is train our learners to use them appropriately and properly. Things like double checking, cross-referencing, making sure that, you know, looking for examples of the word. So if they do think of a word in Portuguese and they try and find it in English, not just going with Google Translate, but making sure that they find other English examples of that word that mean what they want it to mean. Yeah, the tools are there. We're not going to deny them. It's a modern world. Why not use them? But they have to learn to use them properly. And that is the dictionary use. Where we get them to do that. Word formation, I've already mentioned, practice in things like suffixes, prefixes, and so on, possibly associated spelling rules, that kind of thing. Your teachers are not going to explain that in any more depth. Then we've got the listening page here. You can see we've changed subject slightly. Before you listen, after, and while. Remember that when we're looking at things like listening, it's not just a question of doing listening. There is an approach that learners need to use. You know it, I know it. They need practice in learning to use those skills, like prediction, like bringing to bear, like awareness of context, like bringing to bear previous knowledge, all of these things. Again, it's a real life skill. It's an exam skill. It needs practicing, and you will find it there as well. You can see the exam tip there, by the way, too, that I mentioned earlier on. And of course, once they've done the listening, we synthesize that language, we bring it into their own experience by asking them to use it to talk about what they've heard, relate to it. It depends on the particular listening, but they don't just do the listening and finish. We want them to acquire what they've learned in terms of language, not just vocabulary, it could be grammar, it could be phrases, etc. Okay. So coming up here, we have those little kind of extra things that I mentioned, that we have one in each of the units. Okay, just double check that it's, yes, it is. We got those there. So this is basically just looking at other cultures, getting learners to be global citizens, being aware that not everything is the same as what they do, not better or worse, just not the same as what they do. But we always ask them to reflect on their own culture. Now that own culture, obviously Portuguese culture, but you may have some students who have backgrounds from elsewhere, maybe a parent from somewhere else. That's fine too. Yeah, but just getting them to discuss that and looking at how other nations, other cultures do some of the things that teenagers do, and maybe do them different. But there is language learning involved as well. This one is quite fun. You've got immigrate, emigrate, and migrate. If I remember correctly, I can't read it from the screen, it's too small, but if I remember correctly, that's what it says. And those are words that can be easily confused. And it's not the end of the world, but if you want to be confident, for example, speaking, you need to be confident that you're using the correct language. And that's really important. And this is what I said earlier on about vocabulary becoming, in many ways, the key to true proficiency in language, that to give you the confidence to know that when you open your mouth, you're going to say the right thing in the right situation and not embarrass yourself. Not that you should be embarrassed, but people always are when they find themselves making mistakes. We have quotations. These are great for encouraging discussion. They're great for agreeing and disagreeing. They can also be used in compositions with, in reason, not just everywhere all the time. We don't want them starting every composition with, "It was so-and-so who once said," if you're writing a letter to your mother. Not appropriate. Okay, but those quotations are there should they wish to use them in a more formal style of composition, if it's appropriate, but also just to generate discussion. And of course, sometimes to see the writing style of those quotes is kind of cool as well. Okay. Digital citizens, students are encouraged to use information technology to develop their research skills. Very important. There is so much rubbish on the internet, ladies and gentlemen. There is so many traps people can fall into. Learners need to use the resources in information technology responsibly, in an educated manner, in a safe manner. They need to double check. They need to think about things like checking sources. They need to cross-check information. One source on the internet is not a source. And one source that just copies the first source is not a source either. Okay, but double checking facts, not just assuming that all the information out there is correct. What makes a reliable site? What doesn't? And of course, here you get ideas like mediation from the Common European Framework. If they find stuff in, for example, Portuguese, that's cool, but they have to tell you about it in English. Not translate it, just take the general ideas and bring it there as well. It's all good. It's all part of learning to use information technology, okay? We have the cross-curricular approach, allowing them to bring in things from other areas of their school career or of their interests. And again, it just allows learners who maybe have interests in other areas to talk about that, or learners who don't know about some things to get experience of that as well. And maybe they want to find out more. But this idea of bringing all my knowledge into the classroom at certain points is useful. It's also very valid educationally as well. And here we have the third one, public speaking skills, extended monologue. You're looking at, of course, spoken production here. And that is an important skill to develop as well. They will not all become perfect public speakers. Not everyone is going to be happy standing in front of an audience, but learners do need to be able to keep a monologue going. They need to be able to speak more than a couple of sentences. They need to form ideas. They need to be able to justify, as I said before. And these are things that feed into other areas like writing as well. Organizing your thoughts, expressing them, justifying them, getting from A to B to C to D is an important part of language communication generally. And there are so many jobs that you go to where people think they're not going to have to do things like this, and they end up doing it. So it is an important skill to learn, even if they only use it in Portuguese, when they in their working lives. It is important that they learn how to do it. But in this globalized world, they're probably going to have to do it in other languages as well. And again, we look at the different styles of public speaking. How does my relationship with the audience change? What are my aims in my public speaking, and how do I achieve them? Am I persuading, and am I informing? Yeah. So looking at the different styles of public speaking, thinking about the different ways in which that can happen, okay? Vocabulary lesson coming up again. This one has slightly different contents. I mentioned them earlier, so I'm going to flick through them very, very quickly. You've got phrasal verbs. You've got idioms. Yeah? So it's looking at vocabulary in a very, very broad sense as they go through notions and functions of language, appropriacy, what to use when and where, okay? And things like back channeling and keeping the conversation going, asking, just interacting, spoken interaction. Useful language tables help students communicate. So you've got this idea of formal, informal language, as I mentioned, situational awareness. That's only going to work, by the way, if before they do the speaking activity, they are aware of the situation. So before you do kind of maybe pair work speaking activities, do get them to think of where they are and who they are so that they can select the correct information there. Useful language tables, we have said there. So now we are moving on to the writing section, a very important section. The writing section covers a variety of tasks. Now, again, here, this is kind of a little optional as well. If you don't have time to do all the writings, if you don't have time to mark all the writings, at least go through them and discuss them, the kinds of things they might want to write. There's lots of writing practice, so some you can do, some you can discuss. That's entirely up to you, but we do cover a wide variety of those. You have model text, as always, with Express Publishing, and the books we produce with Leirilivro for them to study and go through. So you have a sample of what they're supposed to achieve. And again, this will be helpful if you don't have time to go through everything. The elements that are included in various styles, formal, informal, persuasive, whatever it may happen to be, the kind of stylistic elements that should be there. The tips are there again. That will vary depending on the type, of course. We have the plans there. You can go through, you can brainstorm it with the learners. Some of them you may just stop at the planning stage, but obviously learners do need writing practice. They have an exam coming up, so we would encourage you to do as many of the actual writings as you can. But even if you can't, at least go through them and discuss them. Students are encouraged to review and assess their pieces of writing. Self-assessment, peer assessment, they look through it themselves, they swap it with a partner and constructively criticize, make suggestions. And do remember that you can learn from other people's mistakes as well. So if your partner has made mistakes, you can learn from those too. Attitudes, the idea, sorry, this is the wants in a module, the global citizen idea here. We've got this idea of just becoming aware of the world, how to look after it, how to behave with it, how to behave with the people within it. So we're trying, again, to develop these skills, which can broadly fall under 21st century skills, but they're really just about being a good person. And we think about things like values, etc. I don't like to ever say we teach values. I prefer to say we discuss values and open students' minds to their own values and see if they're appropriate or not. You have these astonishing facts. We hope they'll find them interesting. Now, as I said, we have debates. There is a guide to that, and there is a teacher's guide for debates as well. These are for formal debates, not just for discussions. So you set up a debate, you have this house believes kinds of statement, and then you have the for and against, and it's a very structured kind of debate. Not compulsory, but maybe you can do a couple of them throughout the year. It's kind of fun to get into that, okay? And of course, things like project work, that extends that outside the classroom, maybe getting students to look up things on their own, do research, etc. And that can feed into the debate and discussion as well. Okay, so you've got the project work there too. Review section at the end of every module, which is great. This is great for formative learning. So here we have the learners will go through. What we want from here is for learners to give you feedback. Okay, we want learners to give you feedback on how comfortable they are with the things from the module. And here, for example, if you decided to skip the grammar and you find in the review section they're not comfortable with the grammar, maybe you need to go back and have a quick look at it. Okay, so it's designed to give you feedback to help you help them, or help them help themselves, before you get into summative tests, etc., so that you can double check before you've left that everything is okay. Alrighty. So you got they revise the contents of each module, as you would expect. And it's not about keeping score there. It's about getting their feedback. There is a novel included in the book. As a reader, The Man in the Iron Mask. It's in 4 parts. There is a video that accompanies it. It's the back of the student's book. It's put at the back of the book. It's in the book, so it doesn't get lost. It's not separate. It's not going to disappear. It's equivalent. It's appropriate for the level. You've got reading and listening comprehension tasks, etc., to activate the language. Now, we're just going to, for the last nearly 15 minutes, we're just going to go through the contents and the other things that are part of the series as well. Okay, so for the teacher, you're going to have the teacher's book, you're going to have the teacher's workbook, planning. Many of these things are, some of these things are available for download as well, but the paper versions, once you get them, if you lose one, if a new colleague arrives, as long as the project is being used, you can get those replaced by contacting Leirilivro. Okay, There is a teacher's interactive ebook. We have extra worksheets, review worksheets for work they've done previously. We have the PowerPoints I mentioned. There are the videos. There are 95 of those. Trivia games, optional songs, extra assessment tools, and the famous Sala Digital. I'm going to go through these very quickly to round up and let you know what to expect. As we have done with all our teachers' books over the last few years, what we've tried to do is make the things that are essential for the class, for the teacher, we have put in the margins, okay? Outlining things like the targets you're trying to do, the essential learning you're trying to give to your students, as well as the keys to the exercises. They're there at a glance in the classroom. So again, it doesn't need you to carry around a different one. Come on, computer, do your stuff. Track indicator, if you're using the MP4s, which are downloadable. If you're using electronic ebook, you'll find it on that at the relevant point. Flipped classroom, so you also will have access to the videos as well. You will have all the resources that you might want to use in the lesson. They're all there for you, so you can check that out before each lesson, and suggested assessment activities for things like speaking, etc., that you can use to kind of get into your formative assessment and keep track of how students are going, okay? There is a workbook. The workbook is kind of more designed for self-study, but it is reinforcement there should you choose to use it. The teachers have basically the students' versions with answers in the margins. If you do decide to use that, we would encourage a lot of student work to be done on their own for the workbook. But it is there to reinforce if students are weak, if you want to give them something extra, if you think they need extra practice, they're there as well. And it does include practice tests for the in the national exam format as well. All of these you can look at more closely in the project box and have a look at it in more detail than I'm afraid we can get into now. The planning, again, paper version, but also available to download. The plans follow the whole course. So you have a complete course overview, a kind of yearly plan, going down into lesson plans, which is what you can see there. Everything that you need to do in the lesson is there, how long it should take, what tools you need to bring with you. Also, if you download it, you can add your own notes because you can edit it, so you can add notes or delete things or change things if you wish. And of course, it's there for official purposes as well when you have to show what you're planning on doing in your lessons. As I said, print version, but also downloadable as well there. I should probably just go to next. There we go. There are 55 PowerPoint presentations, and they cover grammar, writing, and public speaking. The majority of them are on grammar. Excuse me, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure I haven't missed something. No, I haven't. I'm good. Okay. Something I was worried about there. So you've got those. You have public speaking PowerPoint presentations to help your learners do that as well. They are all available for download. You can mess around with if you like, add, delete, so on or so forth. Lots of video support. I've mentioned those already. Videos for grammar. You've got the text-based ones and the flipped classroom ones. Remember, they're not the same. And where we have the global citizenship, that's there as well. And a couple of debate videos to demonstrate how a debate should work. The trivia games are available in the teacher's interactive book at this level, okay? So they can be downloaded with the ebook and they can be played in the classroom, online, as you wish there. These are basically a form of revision, and they're supposed to be kind of team games for the learners to play so that you can check. It's just a fun way of revision, but they're normally done in groups. They'll work online if that's where we are, and let's hope we're not, but they'll also work in the classroom environment as well. Song sheets are also there, as the music is, again, to be downloaded. There are lots of extra worksheets. You've got vocabulary, reading, grammar, extra worksheets, completely optional, and you can edit them. If you want extra practice, they're there for you. If you don't need them, you don't need them, okay? But be aware they're there, especially if you need to revise maybe, or if you have learners who are feeling a little weak. You also have review worksheets. This is for stuff that they've done before, just to double check that they've got it. The Teacher's Interactive ebook, we've mentioned, it will function, it is offline. You have to download it, but then it's offline. It contains stuff for all the modules, interactive activities, the videos, the listening, and it will work with things like interactive whiteboard software, interactive whiteboards, or it can be used, God forbid, in a virtual environment by sharing your screen and using it that way as well. That includes all the games, etc., etc., etc. Assessment tools, very, very quickly. This is where I have to click on the links just to show you. Bear with me, you have 6 minutes, we'll get that. Give me a second. There we go. My apologies, it went further than it should have done. You have assessment tools to give you things like formative assessment ideas. Remember, I pointed out that certain of the interactive activities, like the speaking activities, can be used as a form of assessment. Those are outlined for you, which ones you can use to assess the whole class, or maybe just a few students each time. So for example, the critical thinking activities or the pair work or the group work activities can be used to assess their speaking, for example, and writing. So you have a full list of activities that you can use, should you wish, to help you in assessment. I just need to click quickly through all of these. You have extra quizzes that you can use there. Okay, grammar, vocabulary. You've got a lot of those going on. Okay, so if you feel that learners need extra work there, that's important. But very importantly as well, we give you the rubrics to assess. They're assessed from 1 to 4, which is the way it's supposed to happen, that the ministry requires it to happen. You've got the bands and the descriptors of each band, what students need to be able to do to get the particular mark, okay? So you have all that information. That was going to be a great help in things like consistency, in making sure that everybody gets the same marks, especially if you're working a number of different colleagues with the same books. That's very helpful indeed as well. You've got extra listening tests. The audio is downloadable, okay? So you've got that going on there as well. These kinds of tests are available in 2 levels. You have level 1, level 2. If, for example, students miss a test, then they can take it as a catch-up. If they have to work from home because they're ill or something, then you can give them the other version of the test to do as well, okay? It includes all the areas there that are looked at in the module. And again, you have the marking bands and the criteria and the rubrics for them. That is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of standardization. For the speaking, we have the speaking cards. So again, when you wish, you can practice these situations. Okay, they're in A4 format, and those are cards for you there. So I just move forward. And again, the assessment grids, very, very important part of that as well. Letting you know what you're looking out for, letting your students know where they are. Debate, alrighty. There is information for the teacher. This is downloadable on how you might want to arrange the debate, how to manage it, etc. The kinds of things to look out for. That's there as well. Okay. Go back. Self-assessment forms for the student. Okay, based on the ideas of the Common European Framework. I've mentioned this idea of self-assessment, very much part of the formative assessment process, getting students to look at their strengths and weaknesses, and also be able to identify what they can do. Remember, we're looking at, you know, a higher level now, what they can do to improve their skills, peer assessment as well going on there, how other students think you did you convince them, did you not, etc. All right, to round up, the Sala Digital, this is the thing. Now, the Sala Digital is the platform where everything is. When you decide, we hope to use the project, you will get access to this. You don't need to download anything. You will be given access to it. Once you're in there, that's all you have to do. You have to just go in, and then within it, you will find all of these resources that I've been talking about. A little later on, not today, but a little later on, there will be a video produced to give you some idea of how to get into the Sala Digital, and just to show you the kinds of things there. You put your students into classes, okay? You have to put the name, email, put your students into classes. Your students will then be sent a link, which they can then use to get access to whatever they need to get access to on the Sala Digital, okay? No fuss, no, they don't have to set anything up. They don't have to do anything other than use that link to get to the Sala Digital there as well. There's a communication aspect to it, so that the messages can be sent, etc. Obviously, assigning homework. So basically what you do is you select the activities you want to give for homework, and then that is sent as a link to the student, and that can be that link can be accessed through things like Moodle or Teams and things like this, okay? So that students can actually, they don't have to mess around. All they'll do is they'll get their link through maybe one of those formats. They click on it, and it takes them to those activities to be done online. And of course, you can follow their progress through the platform as well, okay? Obviously, all of the things that I've mentioned, the resources, the PowerPoints, the games, the videos, everything like that is available from here, okay? Also, the teacher's ebook is also available to download from the Sala Digital as well. But once you've downloaded that, that's offline, okay? It will help you create tests. There's a bank of questions, etc., or you can develop your own questions. And then you're going to get automatic, you can program in the right answers, automatic correction for the test. Obviously, not open-ended questions or essays. They can't be marked automatically for reasons which I am sure you understand. So you can decide on the different kind of question formats you want, obviously bearing in mind things like the examination. There is a bank of things you can plug in, or you can write your own if you're feeling creative or vindictive, who knows. So let me just double check something here to make sure I got through all of that. Yep, I did. Okay, should be here. We're almost there, guys. Yeah, we're on almost the last slide. So actually, it's pretty much the last slide. So we're pretty much done. For the student, there is obviously the student's book. There's that. The workbook, should you choose, which I've said we encourage for self-study. The students will have access to the Sala Digital for the things that they need access for when they're provided with links, etc. from you. And there is also a flipbook version that they will get, which is kind of a flipbook version of the book in electronic format with listenings and videos there as well for the student. That's not bad. That essentially is everything I needed to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. And I thank you so much for your patience and giving us your time. Please do be aware that the guys at Leirilivro really do listen to some of you making very nice comments. But the point is that there is a very healthy communication between teachers and Leirilivro, and they genuinely listen. And we, from our part as Express Publishing, do everything we can to accommodate them as well. So this book is born from experience. It's born from conversations with colleagues like yourselves. We do hope that you will find it constructive and useful when you're working online, when you're working in the classroom. Let's hope it's the classroom. And if you do have any further questions, if there's anything I didn't have time to answer, the website address is there for all of you, and you are welcome to get in touch as well. So I think I shall call it quits there. I shall thank you for your time. I shall stop sharing that. And I will go back to the main screen. There's my big face again. Thank you very much indeed, guys. And take care until we have the pleasure of your company again. And I hope in person. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.